Hi there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. In this episode, I had a very interesting discussion with Rob Drynan. Rob is an EOS Certified Implementer, business advisor, and he's a member of Canada's Top 40 Under 40. He's been helping out business leaders to achieve their goals, their objectives, and streamline operations for the businesses. Now, this was a very interesting discussion. We had a discussion around the various topics on business leadership, operational challenges, and also strategic challenges as well. You know, as a business owner, there's so many moving parts in a business, and sometimes there's a blind spot that we miss out all the time. And usually these blind spots cause more financial damage than anything else. And this is where EOS framework and experts like Rob comes in and they help you to see those blind spots. You know, as they say in the EOS, if you're spinning your wheels, not gaining momentum in a business, that's when you need a traction. Traction is one of the very popular book from EOS. A link is below the video as well for EOS website. You can check out the book. But I will strongly recommend. I learned a lot from Rob. I gain a different perspective when it comes to operations, managing communication, and managing team players, especially key team players, to make sure they're on the same page as you are. Definitely, you're gonna gain some perspective from my discussion with him as well. But I will strongly recommend to reach out to him, connect with them, and see if there was something that he can help you to achieve your business goals and objectives. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure to subscribe to this channel and share this video and send us your feedback. Until next time, enjoy. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is Rob Drynan. Rob, the area of your expertise, helping people to run a better business. There's so much need for this talent out there. So I'm looking forward to learning from you. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Gurmeet.
Okay. So if you can walk our audience through what is EOS, Rob, and how do you guys help out businesses?
Yeah, EOS is basically it's a management framework. It's an operating system. The EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it's basically a way to organize all the elements of your business and harness the human energy so that you can get everything you want from your business. You and I know so much that there's so many entrepreneurs living out there in what a colleague of mine calls entrepreneurial poverty, where they're putting all their time and effort and energy and money into the business. They're not getting out what they had imagined they would from the start. And running on a framework and having a system helps to solve that problem.
Yeah, especially when you're building a business, there's so many areas to focus and so many areas where you want to spend time and energy on. And growing businesses, that it's critical. But I know I've gone through a lot of stressful the time as well. So I'm sure every entrepreneur, they all go through all those stressful the time and that I think that's what the challenge becomes, right? Where do I focus energy on? Do I focus energy on growing a business or running a business? And how do I make sure it's running the way it should be running, right? And I think that's where a lot of challenges comes in.
It's true. And most entrepreneurs, we tend to put them in a category called the visionary category, which means they're great at the ideas and they're great at innovation and big relationships and moving things forward, but they're not really great at making the trains run on time. We call that the role of an integrator. And so usually when you get to around 10 employees or more, you need both of those because that's when the wheels start to fall off. You need someone who's going to make sure that everybody's doing their job, that they have all the resources they need and they know what their objectives are. And then the visionary is the one who's looking at the new horizons and building those big relationships, often doing some of the selling too, and creating the culture for this organization that's blossoming.
You answered, you mentioned something about 10 employees. I was going to ask you, how do I know as a business owner, when do I need help? And that is that by employee size or are there other symptoms I can pay attention to that will tell me that, hey, listen, I need to have a little bit better system to run my business. What will business leaders need to look out for that will indicate in such a way that, hey, listen, you need to pay attention to these things?
Yeah, I think you're looking for some consistent pain. I think you're looking for when you're not making the profit you had planned to make, or you've seen your profit decline a little bit. You're finding that you're doing most of the work. You're having trouble with people. They're not doing what you expect them to do, or your messages aren't coming through. And you're looking to delegate and elevate. You want to get away from being in the weeds of the business and elevate above to the bigger picture stuff that the business actually needs you for.
Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of business leaders because I work with them, president of the company, CEO on a daily basis. But this is where the struggle is. Way too, and let's face it, most of us, who build businesses, we all come from operating environment. We were good at some sort of skill set, and then that's how we started a business because we thought, we were good at either technical role or some sort of role, so we started our own business, right? And it's very hard to draw, from their leadership was not, we were not taught leadership skills in schools, right? So I think that's where the challenge is, that when do you leave that, your area of your expertise and just focus on growing a company, or simply just stay where you are and keep helping your team to, provide a better service.
Yeah, I think there's a difference. I like to think of the difference between leadership and management. Often visionaries, those visionary types of people are great leaders, meaning they can set a vision, they can identify the future, where the organization is headed, and they're really good at rallying people to pull them along. But when you think of management, I think of it as performance management. And this is about helping people get better on a day-to-day basis, making sure they're really clear on what they need to do, helping them out, letting them know when they're stepping off the track, and making sure they're achieving the objectives on a day-to-day basis. The leadership is a little bit more about setting the future and the destination and letting people find their way there, where the management is showing the path a little bit, walking along the path with those people. And I think that people who start organizations generally tend to be better leaders than they are managers. And that's not a bad thing. You need to be able to think big picture. You need to be able to look at new things and be constantly innovating. So someone needs to be looking down at the ground right in front of their feet.
Mm-hmm. So if you step away from the role, so how do you build accountability into it? How do you make sure that everything's still running as you expected that? Where does that comes in? How do you build those checks and balances into business, Rob?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the main tools with EOS is called the accountability chart. And it does look similar to an org chart, but there's some real key differences. You can imagine the power of stepping back before you even started a company and said, okay, well, what would the right structure for this organization be 6 to 12 months out? And we figure out what those functions are, and then we turn them to seats. So for example, 99% of organizations out there have a sales seat for attracting leads and turning them into customers. They have an operations seat for the secret sauce, whatever the product you manufacture or the service you deliver. And then there's a finance and admin seat for managing the resources of the organization. We build those out into seats by giving them 5 different roles. And what are those 5 things that those seats are accountable? For example, with sales, it's probably revenue. Revenue is probably one of the top ones on there. And we just build out those 5, but it's only 5. So we keep it really simple. What are the 5 things that seat has to be excellent at on a day-to-day basis? And that really helps drive clear accountability. We do this chart for the whole organization before we put any names in seats. And titles in the accountability chart don't really matter. It's really about what that seat serves, what the function that seat serves, what does it own, what's it accountable for. Mm-hmm. And one of the key rules where entrepreneurial organizations always fall down is that only one person can sit in a seat. So you can't have 2 people in the same seat. You can have one person sit in 2 different seats, but you can't have 2 people in the same seats, because when there's more than one person accountable, then nobody's accountable, which moves to your point.
Yeah, that's where I think a lot of struggle is, because we don't draw a lot of that. There's a lot of gray areas between people, roles and responsibilities, and we're not good at drawing that. The boundaries, right? Where does my responsibility start and somebody else's stops, right? That's where I think people need help from somebody like you to draw those lines and simply say, listen, this is how we're going to focus.
Yeah, the 2 things that happen when you don't have that clarity is either things fall through the cracks, which can be catastrophic for an organization, or you have overlap. And then there's 2 people doing similar work, either working against each other or doing twice the effort for half the outcome. And so either way, for an entrepreneurial organization, it's going to cause some degree of pain.
Mm-hmm. That is a good point. So how do you approach a lot of business leaders? Like, I know, we all think we are a very unique business. That's a mindset. Hey, I'm in a very unique business. Nobody knows about my business, right? How do you approach? Does your system, EOS works cross industry? Is there specific industries you guys work with? And how do you help out? Is it a manufacturing side of things? Because they are more process oriented people than definitely any other industry. So how does that approach on a different industry type or different company type?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's really powerful about EOS is this is about execution. And if you have people working in your business, your people need to be organized. They need to understand what their roles are. And so it really does not matter the industry. I work across almost every industry. I think I've worked in almost every industry there is, from tech startups to retirement homes to manufacturing to musical agencies, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, it's really about making sure people know what their role is. They understand the vision for the organization. They understand what their role is in getting there, and that everybody's able to be clear and cohesive, making sure that they can communicate any of the challenges that are holding them back from doing their job or achieving their goals.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah, because I see, a lot of industries, people think that, listen, we are very unique in this area. Nobody knows our business better than we do. So, nobody can help us on that, kid, right? But I guess your point is, that's a great point that, you can, when you're trying to work with the people, people are always going to be different in every company, right? So you're just trying to look at more systems. So are we looking at more on a system level, or is it more on a communication level, Rob? Or what are some of the areas we're touching in a business?
Yeah, it's a system level. It's the way you run the business. So it's a series of tools that starts with the accountability chart. There's a 2-page strategic plan, which is really to establish the vision and be able to share it with the organization. We have a simple scorecard that identifies on a weekly basis what are those key metrics to make sure that your organization is healthy. We set quarterly priorities that tie into that strategic plan. We call those rocks. And those quarterly priorities, you simplify it and you set 3 to 7 for each member of the leadership team. So you know exactly what the priorities for the organization are. And then we have a weekly meeting pulse. So every week you're getting together, checking on those statistics and identifying and solving any of the issues that happen to be holding you back at that time.
Very interesting.
It all falls through a quarterly pace.
Got it. So very interesting. So business leader watching or listening, Rob, one thing we always think about, hey, we have too much on a plate. There's always not enough time because you gotta grow a business, you gotta manage your business. There's so much on the plate. How much is this adding on to what they're already running up against, right? So that's the first thing comes into my mind every time I'm trying to take a new tool or new software or new process and implement it. I'm looking at, hey, what do I have on a plate already? Can I add that to it? Is it going to have enough value for me to adding this work? Because I got to sacrifice something on the other side, right? So what do your experience been with the businesses? How much work is adding to what they're already doing?
Yeah, Gurmeet, that's a really good question because I see that in a very different way, which is you have all this stuff, you have too much on your plate, which means you're not going to get it done. Yeah. Would it be worthwhile looking through all the things on your plate and deciding which things are the most important that you will get done and you'll commit to getting done, and then deciding the ones that you're not even going to try to tackle because they're just not going to happen? It's going to happen that way, whether you decide to do it that way or you don't decide to do it that way. You only have so much time. And EOS at its root is about making those decisions and making those predictions about what you're going to work on and what you're not going to work on. So I don't really look at it as an add-on. I mean, there's something new to learn for sure. And there's a different system to run on, but really it's fairly seamless. The analogy I like to use is if someone handed you a computer that had no operating software on it, you might be able to create some type of program. If it's me, maybe I can use it as a calculator. I'm going to be able to use about 1% of the potential of this computer. But if you hand me something with Windows or iOS on it, all of a sudden I'm going to be able to do anything. And in general, every single business in every single industry has been able to use pretty much those two softwares, operating systems on their computers. And that's the way I look at EOS. It's just It's just a framework to help you run your business better.
Mm-hmm. So it's from business owner standpoint, I take I understand your point that, listen, you're just making the right decision. But how about your team members? Are you adding something to your team members on a daily workflow or accountability side of things, or they have to use different software? Are you adding more to their workload what they're already up against?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think the same thing happens. As a leadership team, you decide on the priorities. And then when you go back to your teams, you decide on your priorities and what those most important things that have to happen are. It's not all the things. You're still going to have stuff that comes up, but you're going to have a better filter to decide whether it's A, going to help you get closer to the vision of the organization, and B, it's going to help you complete your objectives for the quarter.
Got it. And how do you measure the success of it, Rob? What are you seeing that from your experience that where you see some of the successful stories, or what kind of changes what kind of changes people saw in their businesses when they implement EOS, and how long does it take usually for them to see the changes?
Yeah, I mean, every organization is different from a change perspective, but we've had some really successful stories. I had one client who was in the visual effects industry, and we started working together, implementing EOS, and their objective was to find to sell. And they found a partner to purchase them, and that company said, "You're the best run VFX firm that we've ever seen." And they attribute that to EOS, which is really powerful. And they believe they got more for the business because they were running on a system. It was not just in the founder's head. It wasn't just dependent on that founder. There's a system and a structure for the organization. So that would be one example. I think EOS says that on average, there's about an 18% increase in profitability in an organization based on implementing it. And then the second part of your question was, how long does it usually take? Every organization is different, but on average, we say that it takes roughly 2 years to implement the whole system from top to bottom of your organization. And the whole idea of working with someone like me, like an implementer, is that we teach you the tools, we help you implement them in the organization. We work with the leadership teams to do that. And then we get out of your way. So when the company is running on EOS, you don't need us. And that goes back to speaking about me not needing to be an expert in your industry. I'm just helping you get running on EOS, and then I'm going to get out of your way. You're going to graduate. You're going to become an EOS operated business, and then you're going to go on your way and do great things.
So how do I know over the time that if I'm doing it right? Let's say 6 months. Definitely. Process. We know one of the issue with the process. We implement something, we do very well in the first time. First year, second years maybe slow it down a little bit. People come and go in a company, and your team changes over the time, right? And your business changes, and that's the nature of the business. Got to change. Technology changes, right? So how do I make sure that I'm still on running the way I should be running when you were helping the company to implement EOS? How do I verify that a year after, 6 months later, or a couple of years later, that I'm still on a target with that?
Yeah, this is all about consistency. So we meet on a quarterly basis. After we've set up the tools, we meet on a quarterly basis. We get together for a full day every quarter and a 2-day annual retreat with your leadership team. And so through that consistency, we're just practicing these tools. And you can imagine the first time you set these quarterly rocks, your big objectives for the quarter, you don't set them very well. You need to learn, you need to know what works and what doesn't. And so every single quarter, you're just getting stronger and smarter and better at setting those as a leadership team. So you continue to get stronger as you go along. But at some point, you're going to graduate. You're going to know how to do this business, run your business on EOS, and you won't need me. And then you just call me anytime you run into problems.
Got it. And does that work the same way for smaller company or large corporations, Rob? If you mentioned that 10, 15 employees when you start thinking about the EOS, but how about large corporations where they have a couple hundred employees? How much is that undertaken in terms of work? Leadership wise, maybe the same, but how about the size of the company? Because you have a lot of teams that you're trying to engage with, right?
Yeah. Larger companies. The largest company I work with is 750 employees, which is not typical. Usually we go up anywhere from 10 to 250 employees. But this company is doing a great job on EOS, and it takes them longer because you can imagine you get your team set up, and then you go by tier. Every single tier, you have to teach them those tools and help them get set up and get comfortable. And it just takes time for people to, change their behaviors a little bit and get more comfortable with how EOS runs.
Got it. Is there training built in for people to as a company changes, teams changes, you add more people or you let go some people? So is there enough training built in for transition?
Yeah, it is so easy to get up and running when everybody else is doing it. It's basically becomes a behavior. It's the way you operate. So there's training, there's learning, but it's not really a heavy lift. You kind of get in and figure it out. So I'll often have a new leadership team member come in partway through our process, or later on. Leadership team members often change, and they get up to speed really quickly. Usually it's just a side phone call just to make sure they understand everything. And then once they go through one meeting, they're feeling pretty confident with the process.
Got it. So one of the challenge in Canada, you probably saw from a news recently that we up against productivity challenges, right? Our productivity seems to be very low compared to other, our economic, advanced countries. We are probably, number 18. Does this check the, the product, does he ever touch the productivity in a company as well, or either measures it or helps them to improve the productivity? Does he ever come across, or transact with the productivity side of the company as well?
Yeah, I mean, it really is all about productivity. When you think about having clarity in your role and what your objectives are, and being able to have a couple of measurables to make sure you know what a good job looks like at the end of the day, at the end of the week, that's 100% productivity. That's allowing you to focus on the important things and not focus on the less important things. And we even go into meetings for me because we know that meetings just suck up everybody's time and
Exactly.
rarely do things get done. We've got a special meeting pulse that we use. It's called a level 10 meeting agenda that makes sure that you're checking on those stats and then you're focused on solving the issues that are holding you back. Because we've all heard from employees, well, nothing's ever going to change here. Nobody's ever going to change it. We're just going to have to live with it. This solves exactly that problem.
So, I had a Gary Valentine on my, on a podcast a few weeks ago, and we were talking about productivity and what he was, mentioning that, there's a different ways of measuring the productivity before COVID and what after COVID, because we're not sitting in the, same building anymore. People probably working from home. So is there, what are your thoughts or what are your take on that? Do we measure productivity differently, from an EOS standpoint as well? What we did before COVID, anything changed the way we measure productivity, or how do we handle productivity?
I couldn't comment on whether it's changed. I mean, definitely the environment of not being in the office is something that we do see. But I think the point with EOS is that you collectively agree on what you need to measure. You measure what matters. And so when the leadership team is deciding these things are important, and then that leader is bringing it back to her team to say, hey, we've got these are the things that we're being measured on. This is success that we're being measured on. Everybody starts to orient themselves towards those goals, and a lot less time is wasted.
So once we decide for we make a decision for quarter, or for we making for the whole year, that this is what we're going to measure for time being to achieve our goals, Rob? Is it for short term or for the long term as well?
It's both. It's both. So I talked about that 2-page strategic plan. We set a goal. We call it a 10-year target. It can be anywhere from 5 to 30 years out. But we set kind of that North Star. What's the big picture? Where do we want to get with this organization long term? And that's not very descriptive. It's high level. So it might be we want to be a $100 million organization, or we want to have offices in every province of the country. It could be something like that. We want to be the number one market share in XYZ industry. And then we pull it down to the 3-year picture, which we set a revenue, profit, and measurable target for the 3 years, and then 5 to 15 descriptors of how the organization is going to look different at that point. So that might be we're gonna get a new warehouse. We're gonna have to implement an ERP. We're gonna need to hire 50 employees. Anything like that. We're gonna offshore ABC, and then we pull it back to a year. So revenue, profit, and measurable this time for the year. And then we set 5 to 7 goals. What are the most important things that you have to get done this year in the organization? Okay, so we're just breaking it down. And then from there, we go to quarterly. And what are the 5 to 7 most important things the company has to get done this quarter on our way to achieving the 1-year goals and the 3-year objectives? So that's the idea.
Good. I see. So where do you see some of the challenges, Rob? Looks like, there's so many benefits, business can, scale much faster. Where do you see some of the challenges business leaders struggle when they embark on it, or they hesitant to embark on it? Where you see where people struggle?
Yeah, the EOS is simple, but it's not easy. And where people struggle the most is usually with people, meaning that they don't have the right people in the right seats. It's a Jim Collins phrase that we use. And right people share your core values. Right seats means they get it, they want it, they have the capacity to be excellent at their job. And the truth is, if you had all the right people in the right seats, you probably would be achieving everything you want to achieve. So something has to change. And that's usually one of the hardest parts. And often it's the weakness of the leader. Doesn't mean the leader or the founder has to change, but they should change their role. When you're talking about them being pulled in too many directions, I was talking about them being great leaders and not managers. That's often one of the key pieces is those leaders, they want to change direction every 3 months, every 6 months. They read a book. they go to a seminar and they have a new idea and they want to suddenly change direction, and their team is just chasing their tails. So sometimes it's about that. The people part is the hardest part, and creating that accountability to say, I said I'm going to do this. I promise I'm going to get it done, and then actually focusing on it, because it turns your business from being reactive into proactive. And not a lot of people are used to that, particularly after COVID. You just wait for a meeting, wait to get an email. You're really, standing up and getting stuff done.
I can see this is the biggest challenge because a lot of my colleague business leaders, they were so hesitant to make a decisions. About people is you got to make decisions. You gotta make some tough decisions or a simple one, but you got to make decision, right? And I think that's where a lot of hesitation I see, that people just not making decisions, just letting go the way. And it's big change, especially with the people around people. You got to make those big changes, but that's where you sign up for this role as a building a business. That's a value you bring to the company, making those decisions. But I can see that that's the biggest challenge when people making decision. Not having information is one thing, because I deal with that from a technology standpoint, but not making decision is and a lot of people don't understand. You probably experience this as well. No decision is also a decision in a way that you're not making changes in a company.
Absolutely. As an entrepreneurial organization, any action is better than no action, in my opinion. At least you have some control over that. And I think part of what EOS does when we have these meetings is it allows you to make those decisions a little more collectively. So you can imagine being with your leadership team, you have a decision to face instead of the leader just going for a walk, or waking up in the middle of the night and making a decision saying that we're going to do this because I'm the leader and I should know the answers. You can collectively discuss it, debate it, get everybody's opinions on it, and then make a decision. It's not consensus. I want to qualify that. We're not looking for consensus. We're looking for an educated decision.
Very interesting. How do you deal with some of the challenges I see in the companies, because I've been dealing with this for almost last 7-8 years, where families are involved in a business, right? Not all the stakeholders who are CEO, presidents. A lot of businesses and small business run by families, as and there's so many family members involved in a business, and sometimes they're just not on the same page. So decisions getting out of these families sometimes is very challenging. What are your thoughts on that? How do you handle that part?
Yeah, Gurmeet, probably about half the companies I work with are family businesses, and it's so interesting. And there was a great Harvard Business Review article written, I think it was written in the 70s, about the three circle model for family businesses, and the three hats you wear. And those three hats are a family member, which means a brother or sister, son or daughter, brother. There is an owner, because if you're in the family, you usually have an ownership stake in the business. And then there's an operator. And just a few minutes ago, we were talking about how this stuff can be hard. Well, this one's hard. And what it is you can be a family member and you can be an owner. But if you're going to take an operator seat, you have to be great at that job, or you can be fired. And that's where the real challenge comes in. That's what's holding back most family businesses, is if you can be really open and honest as to whether that person is capable of doing the job, wants to do the job. Usually those are intertwined. Then your organization is going to get a lot healthier. And then as an owner, you can benefit. And as a family member, you'll benefit because you're not going to be going through all that strife. But it takes a little while to get there. It's not that simple and obvious. But over time, as you have this repetition of the people, who got their rocks done, who's achieving their metrics on their weekly scorecard, you start to see where things are succeeding and where things are falling down.
Yeah, those are difficult conversations. Definitely, it's a hard work, but if as long as there's the best interest for the business, you can make the decision. But I see the struggle from families and this, and a lot of business, especially when it's a second generation business. Somebody who built the business, they know what it takes. They have a passion for it, and now they're trying to move the business to a second generation, or they already moved to the second generation. You see that the focus on a business loses, it left behind a little bit, right? So I think that's where a lot of struggle comes in. That's where the lack of decision comes in.
Absolutely. It's really hard. The eyes that the second generation or third generation see the business through are very different. They don't have an understanding of where the business came from. And honestly, times have changed. So it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means it's different. And so I think being able to come together and look at it from an operations standpoint can really help. build those bridges and make sure that the organization is going to be healthy. And as you said, you've got to always put the greater good of the organization first.
And other side of that as well, Rob. If I'm building a business, and a business not growing, it could be I'm holding a business back, and the next generation comes in, and they probably see more opportunities in it, and more advanced technologies, and they can embark on those opportunities, right? So it could be benefit to because they see some opportunities that I didn't see because I built a business. I was just looking for some so I had some blind spot that I just couldn't see those opportunities.
That's right. That's right. And, to be able to establish what the operating plan for the organization is and share it with the previous generation who are still family members and owners, but they may not be operators any longer or don't want to be operators. They want to hand it off. To have that game plan so that everyone can discuss it and agree is really valuable.
Mm-hmm. How about M&A kind of transactions, Rob? Do you guys ever get involved in that? I see a lot of, during COVID, a lot of companies change hand, whether somebody buying business or selling business. Is, EOS system, is it also used to build a business value? Because definitely if you're running on a platform like EOS, definitely the business value got to be higher because you're running very smooth business compared to somebody's just doesn't have all the documentation, all the ducks in a row, and they're trying to sell the company, right? So I'm just thinking the business value got to be going up if you're running properly. Does that ever comes across if somebody trying to either position the business for exit or they're looking to acquire a company?
Yeah, there's two sides to that. The first, we talked about family business a little bit, which is often about transition. So you need to create that structure, that system, so that the business is easier to transition to the next generation. But there's also when you want it to sell, and what EOS does is pulls the organization away from being founder-led and moves it over to what I call mission-driven. So this is an organization that can run without that leader, without the founder, which means that you have a business that you can sell. Otherwise, as what's the old saying that if the business can't run without you, you don't have a business, you have a job.
Yeah.
And so we create that system. We help create that system so an organization can buy you. And they can run it without needing you to be there to hold their hand every step of the way.
I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges most business owners have. They're all involved in a business, right? They take a vacation for a few days and they come back and then they're bombarded with all the workload. I mean, if you're gonna come back and you're gonna be bombarded with the workload, you haven't built what it should be. That the work still carries out if you're not around for a little bit.
Yeah, and it's fair that entrepreneurs often don't know this stuff. They don't know how to do that. All they've known is it's easier if I do it because then there's less train wrecks for me to fix later.
Yeah.
But if you can slowly build that structure and that system and get those right people that can take care of those pieces, part of the vision for this is that you're hiring people. You as a generalist want to hire people that are better at those specific skills than you in every single segment. You want to hire the best salesman you could find out there that's going to be better at it than you ever were. You want to hire the best finance person. That one's usually pretty easy because most entrepreneurs aren't great on the finance front. So if you're looking to fill those seats and you're uncompromising, that's how you're going to build a terrific business that all of a sudden doesn't need you, which, honestly, for entrepreneurs becomes a new problem, which is what am I going to do with my time now that I don't have to live in the business every single day?
Well, that's opportunity. I mean, I hope people don't get into business just to build one company. If you're going to build a second company or third company, that's opportunity. You go build a second company and do the same thing. And then what you learn and take it there and then build a third. So you grow by building multiple companies. I mean, I think that's the greatest opportunity you can create for yourself. I haven't got there, but I think that is a great opportunity that you could free from the first company you built and take all the lessons learned and build a second, third company, whatever you want to do in your life.
I agree. I think that's such a great opportunity to pull those lessons from the first company you built. We make so many mistakes that we can learn from those and take them to the next one and just keep moving quickly. Yeah. Gurmeet, you asked also, you talked about the M&A. We also get approached by M&A firms who are purchasing companies and want them to run on EOS because then they know they can see, they can get the input. When the business is running, they don't have to be high touch, and they can get the inputs they need to know that the business is succeeding the way they want it to. It kind of puts everybody on the same playbook, which makes it easier for them too. Those companies who are doing roll-ups or platforms.
Yeah, because I see a lot of those business deals that are up. The reason I ask, I see a lot of companies when they buy businesses, they put that in a contract or in a deal that owner has to stay for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, just part of the deal, because they don't want to lose the clients, right? And if I'm looking at that deal and compared to that, I'm looking at a deal where it's run on an EOS. I know I'm not gonna need EOS if I buy the business. I'm not gonna need owner to stay for that long. If I buy the business who runs on EOS, that's a much safer deal and a less risky deal for me to go on, or other way around, where I have to keep owner for another year for me to be profitable, so I don't lose any business during that time.
Yeah, in my opinion, it is a rare founder who sells their business that is prepared to continue to put in the same amount of sweat, work all the hours, put out all the fires as they arise once they've signed the business off to someone else. So you're better off to have that person stay and be able to do hand off the big relationships, or have a lighter touch with the business, because the machine still runs without them. It doesn't, they're not a critical piece of the puzzle.
Very interesting. So let's talk about your journey, Rob. How did you get involved in what got you interested in helping business leaders to solve, see those blind spots and help them to grow their companies?
Okay, so this starts a way back. I'm pretty old, but I started my first business on the West Coast when I was pretty young, and things were going great. I was making really good money with it. I had opened two spaces. I was working, had two spaces going, but my father, I'm from Toronto, my father got ill, and so I had to move back to help take care of him. And so I tried to sell the business, and that's when I realized I didn't have a business. I had a job, I had a revenue stream, but everything was in my head. So that was a pretty painful lesson. I couldn't sell the business. Came back and started working in downtown Toronto on Bay Street, and decided to volunteer for a little charity that's a camp for children with cancer. It used to be called Camp Uchigeus. Now it's called Campfire Circle. Okay. I volunteered there, and that was my first experience with organizational alignment. You had all these volunteers coming together from all walks of life, and they had one singular purpose, and that was just give these kids the best experience of their life. That was really powerful, and it was in contrast to my experience on Bay Street, where, in my opinion, when you turn your back, the knives came out. So I talked to my wife, I decided to take what I thought was a career-limiting move and become the executive director of this little charity. I think I was employee number 3. Yeah. And over the next 7 years, we built that thing up quite substantially. We increased the organization by at least 400% on all fronts. Wow. We won a whole bunch of fundraising awards. We opened a site up in Muskoka, down in the city. We started working at Sick Kids Hospital, all these places. We just had an incredible vision that was supported by an amazing community of donors and a great team of staff. And we won a bunch of awards, and I got named to Canada's Top 40 Under 40, which was a real point of pride for my family. Mm-hmm. But my big epiphany came in a particularly good board meeting after a great quarter, where my board chair, who was the CEO of a company with about 1,000 people, said, "Rob, if I had your team, I could do twice the work with half the people." Wow. And that just that kind of floored me. I thought, I'm running a company with 30 staff. He's running a company with 1,000, and mm-hmm. he's looking at me like I have some answers. And so that just set me on a bit of a different path to help other organizations move from founder-led to mission-driven. And mm-hmm. so I started consulting, mostly consulting with service-based organizations on their operations, and helping them go usually from about headcount of 25 to headcount of 75, because there's some really unique things that happen to an organization in that inflection point. And things were going great. I did that for about 10 years, but I was frustrated because the results were inconsistent. And someone handed me a copy of Traction, which is the book that explains what EOS is. And I fell in love with it. I've got my original copy still. It's got all the dog ears and the highlights and everything. And I approached my clients and I said, "Hey, I think we need to implement this system." And only 2 of them said yes, but those 2, their fortunes changed pretty quickly. The owners became happier and healthier, doing more of the stuff they wanted to do, not the stuff they had to do. And their companies started to grow and become more and more profitable. So I just knew I was onto something. Mm-hmm. So after that I started implementing EOS with that's the only tool I use with my clients. And that was About 4 years ago, I started doing that exclusively, and I haven't looked back.
Wow. And it's not as popular as in the US, I take it, right? Is there a reason for it, or simply we just never discovered that EOS that it can help build a better companies?
Gino Wickman's from the Detroit area. He's in
Okay.
Michigan, and I think it took off a lot more quickly there. I think the first implementer in Canada started about 6 or 7 years ago. A guy named Al Moscardelli, and he's been doing great with it, but the uptake has been a little bit slower, but it's really starting to catch on now. I think there's about 17 implementers in Ontario that do what I do now. So it's started to take off a little bit, but it just, the more success stories you hear, when people talk to people running their companies on EOS, the more success stories you hear, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, I got access to this book, I think few years ago as well. And I've been using that book, I leave with the business owner. I don't know if anybody read the book or not, but I've been leaving those books behind, if I talk to people. But I think it's one of the greatest system, it's put a lot of things into perspective, definitely, you're expert on that. I just read the book, and, definitely it opens up. We always talk about in my, technology business, system, process. That's where, we do in a business. So, to me, it's about building those systems and processes that run smoothly, even you're not there all the time, right?
It's right. But yes, absolutely. And those processes are run by people. If you don't have people in your business, your life's going to be a lot easier. But most of us have people in their business, and we need clarity on what they should be doing. They need a purpose. So that's really about making sure that everybody's aligned and creating that organizational alignment. Getting everybody rowing in the same direction. There is nothing more powerful for an organization than that.
Yeah, in a way, it also speaks a volume on a personal and a professional growth for people as well, right? So when you have everybody moving in the same direction, there's so much you can add on a personal, professional, on a training side of things, right? You can add a lot more on for professional development, especially in my business. Technology changes. You want to add a lot of that. If you have the right people on the right seats, definitely allow you to bring a lot of other items that you want to bring in a business as well.
Yeah, and people are happier too. There's a lot of fulfillment. People want to do a good job at their work. So if you can lay out what a good job looks like and they can achieve that, they're going to feel really fulfilled. They're going to like working with their colleagues. You're just going to see a whole different culture.
How about management of people? The quarterly reviews. Do you ever set up a goals for people as well? What they need to achieve? Like, do you set up those performance reviews? And do we ever get into that area as well from HR standpoint?
One of the tools we use is quarterly conversations, and so this is a bit of a lighter conversation. So this isn't a performance review as it would relate to compensation, etc.
Okay.
But you check in with your team members on a quarterly basis, and this is just more of a casual conversation. And you talk about what your core values for the organization are and how they are tracking against them. Are they are they living those core values on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? Are they aligned to those core values? And then you want to talk about where their rocks are at. So what are those 5 priorities for the rocks too? And we just do stuff like that. So it's more of a casual conversation that really helps the manager and the employee get on the same page with where they're going and how they plan to get there.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So if I'm a business owner, Rob, and I want to take, I want to start working on an EOS, how do I start? Where do I start from? And what is the right approach for somebody to, let's say somebody with a 20, 25, 30 employees, how do they go about it? How do they start?
Sure. Everybody's different. There's different ways to approach implementing EOS. Lots of companies that I know have self-implemented at first. Some are really happy with that. Sometimes they come to someone like me. So, probably the first thing to do is read Traction, get a copy of Traction and read it. If they don't have one, they can always reach out to me. If they're not big on reading that, there's another book called Get a Grip. And this is a fable. It's a story version of a company that implemented EOS. So that's usually for visionaries or people who like to listen on audiobooks, because Traction, in my opinion, it doesn't make for a great audiobook, especially when you're driving. You'll just lose track of it.
Yeah.
So that would be the start. The second thing to do is you can reach out to someone like me, an EOS implementer. We'll take you through a 90-minute workshop that will explain all the tools in the process of implementing those tools. And then you'll be able to decide whether you want to work with someone like me or not. And if you don't, you can also go to EOS Worldwide and join their base camp and essentially teach yourself all the tools so you can implement it yourself. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. It's not always having to work with someone like me. But in my opinion, I think this is generally accepted. This is the fastest and working with an implementer is the fastest and most efficient way to get your business up to speed and firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I was going to say that, definitely, most business leaders, what are we up against at the time, Rob, all the time? It's the speed, what are we looking for, right? So to get to where we want to get to. Definitely educating yourself is a great idea. You always want to read books and educate yourself. But when you want to achieve something in a company, time is always an asset, right? So, and the other side of that is you've been working on this with a lot of companies. There's going to be a lot of blind spots that I'm not going to be able to see those blind spots. So that's where I think those coaches and consultants, somebody like you come in, simply say, listen, don't go this way. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, right? And business owners, generally speaking, I can speak for myself that I don't have a time to make mistakes and learn from it. I just want somebody to say, show me how it's done and let's get it done and let's move on from there, right? Because there's no trial and error kind of, you're going to waste a lot of time on a trial and error kind of approach.
Yeah, and the other benefit that I've heard quite frequently is, someone's got to run those meetings, and these are full day sessions, and someone's got to run them. And for a leadership team to run them, it's hard to be in the system and then also be able to see the whole system. So you bring in someone like me, and I facilitate those conversations, and I identify where those blind spots are or those difficult pieces, sort of that unspoken. The white elephants in the room, that sort of thing. It's up to me to identify those and raise those issues, get them solved, because that's the stuff that's holding you back.
Yeah. And so many emotions happens in the meetings as well, right? But you coming from a totally different perspective, you coming from definitely from outside perspective and simply, looking, hey, how do I improve this? Where so many emotions happen in a meeting because there's a team environment, people working together. I think that's a totally different approach, but to just simply objectively look at it, how do I improve this process?
Yeah, there's a lot of emotions that show up in these meetings. And part of getting a strong team health is letting those emotions come out and getting the issues behind them solved. And that's a big part of my role is to, really identify where those things are and talk about them, get them out on the table so they can be fixed. And the organizations usually, we come out of these meetings, people feel 100 pounds lighter. They've taken stuff off their shoulders. I always say, if it's still in your head at the end of the day, if you didn't say what you needed to say, you have not done your job.
Yeah.
And so being able to talk about those things in a safe environment is really powerful for team members.
Very interesting. There's so much to learn from you, Rob. Definitely, I learned so much. Business leader who are watching, definitely, I would say simply reach out to you for conversation. Who knows what opportunity opens for, from there and go from there. But definitely, I would recommend that, work with somebody like you. The time is always, where we up against as business leaders, business owners. You want to get there faster and then improve on it instead of just trying to make small little mistakes and trying to learn from it. It can take you years and years by the time you implement something. So where can people get a copy of those books you mentioned, Rob, and how can the people, connect with you?
Yeah, Traction, you can find it anywhere. And if they want to reach out to me, they can email me, or I'll give you the contact information so that we can put it up on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm in Toronto, and I do have clients across most of the country. And so I'm happy to speak with anybody who has more questions. And if I can't work with you, if it's not a good fit, then one of my colleagues happily will.
Definitely. Okay, so I'll include a link below the video as well, so people can click a link to it. They can order the books and also your information as well. They can reach out to you, but I'll definitely recommend reaching out to you, have a conversation. I learned so much. I'm sure every business leader has a conversation. They're gonna learn. They're gonna take away so much from your discussion with them.
Yeah, thanks, Gurmeet. I really appreciate the conversation.
Good stuff. Thank you so much for your time, Rob.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.